All right, let's do chapter 3 tests here for you. Okay, so it says average rate of change, which is the slope. And we're going from -1, so we're going to find f of -1 by putting -1 into this. That's going to be 5 times -1 plus 3 times -1 squared. So that's -5 and plus 3 is -2. And then we're going to find f of 2. And that's going to be 5 times 2 plus 3 times 2 squared. So that's 10 plus 4 times 3 is 12, 22. And so the change in y, slope is change in y, so it goes from -2 to 22. That's plus 24. As the x changes from -1 to 2, which is plus 3, so that's a slope of 8 over that interval -1 to 2, and so a positive 8 means that it's increasing. Okay. Number 2. We're supposed to do all this stuff with what the equation is 6x squared minus 7x minus 5, which does factor to, let's see, 2x and 3x will multiply to be 6x squared. Minus 5, it's going to be a 1 and a 5, and one of them's minus. If I do 2 times 5 for the outside, that would be 10, and if I make that minus, that'll be minus 10. And if I do plus 1 here, that'll make plus 3. So minus 10 plus 3 is -7. Okay, so our x-intercepts, I set each one of these equal to 0, so that'd be 2x plus 1 equal to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. Divide by 2. So one x-intercept is -1/2, comma 0. It's a point, so it should be in point form. The other one, if I set 3x minus 5 equals 0 and add 5 to both sides, then I get 3x equals 5. Divide by 3 and I get x equals 5/3, or 1 2/3. Or 1.6666666. Those are my x-intercepts. Now I could have got those also by doing the quadratic formula, which would have been the opposite of b, which, let me write it down, the quadratic formula is opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and if you don't have this on your note card, you should. All of that over 2a, not just the last part. So the opposite of a -7 is plus 7, plus or minus the square root. -7 squared is plus 49. And then we have a -4 times a positive 6 times a -5. There's two negatives, so that'll make it plus. 4 times 6 is 24, times 5 is 120. All over 2 times a, and that's 6, so that's 12. 49 plus 120 is 169. The square root of 169 is 13. So we have 7 plus 13, or 20, divided by 12. And 4 goes into both of those. 5 and 3, and so there's the 5/3. And 7 minus 13 is -6 over the 12, and there's the -1/2. Or you could have typed A, B, and C, the 6, the -7, and the -5 into the calculator, and it would have given you those. Y-intercept, you put in 0, and you're left with -5. You put in 0 for the x, and you get -5. This is a point, so you make it a point in parentheses. Line of symmetry. Well, that's the -b over 2a, or 7 over 12. But it's a line, so you write in the equation, x equals 7/12. Vertex is at the 7/12, and then you plug 7/12 in for the x's. So we're going to have 6 times 7/12 quantity squared minus 7 times 7/12 minus 5. 7/12 squared is 49 over 149 over 144 times a 6. Then we have minus 49 over 12 minus 5. And 6 goes into 144. Let's see, what is that? 24 times. 49 24ths minus 12 49 12ths, getting a common denominator. This would be minus 98 24ths. 49 from minus 98 is minus 49 12ths. So this is minus 49 24, minus 5. 24 goes into 49 2 times, so with 1 left over. So this is minus 2 and 1/24, minus 7, so that's minus 7 and 1/24. Not a pretty number. Increasing. This is a parabola that's in the standard position, opening up. So it's going to be increasing from the vertex to the right. The vertex is at 7/12 in the x, and we always do these with the x. So from 7/12 to infinity, it's increasing. And it's decreasing from negative infinity up to 7/12. And that's number 2a. Number 2b. I'm going to hold off on the x-intercepts for a second. I'm going to do the vertex first, actually, and that says this parabola has moved -3 and then up 2, so the vertex is at -3, 2. And therefore the line of symmetry is x equal -3, because that's where it's been moved back. Up and down doesn't move this line of symmetry. Okay, so now let's do so we can do the intervals of increasing right away. Since this is a negative on front of the x squared, it's an upside down parabola, so it's increasing from negative infinity up to -3, and it's decreasing from -3 to infinity. Now let's do the x-intercepts, which means you put in 0 in for the y, and so we get 0 equals -0.5 quantity x plus 3 quantity in quantity squared plus 2. So we subtract 2 from both sides, and we get -2 equals -0.5 x plus 3, close parenthesis, divide by the -0.5, and we get half goes into 2 4 times, and the negative in the negative is positive, so 4 equals x plus 3 quantity squared. Take the square root of both sides and we get the square root of 4 is 2, but when you take the square root you do plus or minus. Equals x plus 3. Subtract 3 from both sides and you get negative 3 plus or minus 2 equals x. Minus 3 plus 2 is negative 1 is one x-intercept. And negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. 0 is the other x-intercept. Now to find y-intercept, you put in 0 for x. So if we do that, we have negative 0.5 times 0 plus 3, which is 3 squared plus 2. So 3 squared is 9, half of 9 is 4.5. So we got negative 4.5 plus 2, which is negative 2.5 when x is 0. And that's 2b. (3a). So we've got a parabola. Oops, this is a x squared minus 3x, so that's a right side up parabola. I'll do it down here. And we have a line, a 2x minus 4, that's a plus 2x, so it's a sloping up. And they're supposed to run into each other, and they will when these are both equal. So we'll have x squared minus 3x equals 2x minus 4. Keeping the x squared positive, I'm going to bring these over by subtracting 2x from both sides. So I'll have x squared minus 5x. And adding 4 to both sides, so I'll have plus 4 equals 0. This factors, or I can use the quadratic formula, but it factors to x minus 4 and x minus 1. Minus 1 times minus 4 is plus 4. Minus 1 and minus 4 makes minus 5. So x is equal to 4 or 1. Setting those two equal to 0. Now it asks for the points of intersection. Well, this is where the x is 1, but what's the y? So we put 1 in for the x's in here or in the other one, either one. 1 squared is 1 minus 3 times 1 is minus 3. 1 minus 3 is minus 2. If I put 4 in, 4 squared is 16 minus 12 is 4. So if I put in 4, I get, what did I say, 16 minus 12, 4. I can put them in the other side, I should get the same thing. If I put in 1 here, I get 2 minus 4, which is minus 2. If I put in 4 in here, I get 8 minus 4, which is 4. So there's the 2 points of intersection. So I'll put them up here for this. We got 1 minus 2 and 4, 4. Now this says, when is the parabola, f of x was the parabola, below the line? The parabola is below the line from 1 to 4. You always do this in respect to x, and or equal, so it can be include the 1 and up to 4, and there's the answer to this one. Now let's do 4. And it says if it determine if it has a max or min. Well, it's write it in order. It's got a negative x squared plus 4x plus 6. So it's a negative, so it's curved upside down, so it's going to have a max. Now, to find out where that max is, we do the line of symmetry by doing minus b, so that'd be negative 4 over 2 times a, which is negative 1, so 2 times negative 1. So that's minus 4 over minus 2, which is 2. So the line of symmetry is x equals 2. So the max is going to happen when x is 2, but that isn't the height. To find the height, we plug 2 in, which is what we do to find the vertex. We put in 2 and find out what that is. So that's going to be the negative of 2 squared plus 4 times 2 plus 6. 2 squared is 4, and the negative of that's negative 4. Plus 8 plus 6 is going to be 4 plus 6, or 10. So that's the vertex, and now we know the max is 10. That's how high it gets. So part D, when is this increasing? Well, if it's an upside down parabola, it's increasing from negative infinity up until we get to the line of symmetry of 2. So it's increasing from negative infinity up till 2. And now when is it positive? Well, that's anytime it's above the x-axis, so we've got to find the x-intercepts. So we could plug this in the quadratic formula, or we could try factoring. Now if we're trying to find out when it's equal to 0, so I'm going to write it down. 0 equals negative x squared plus 4x plus 6. It's hard to factor with a negative there. Multiply everything by negative 1 and we'd get still 0 equals x squared minus 4x minus 6. And if I try to factor this, see, 6 is 2 and 3, that will make it 1 and 5. This won't factor. So then I have to go to the quadratic formula, which I can just put these into my calculator, but for those of you who don't have one, I'm going to go through. So it's the opposite of b, 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, minus 4 times 1 is minus 4 times minus 6 is plus 24, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. So 16 plus 24 is 40. So I got 4 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 2. And when is it positive? Well, if it's upside down, it's going to be between the two x-intercepts. Positive means greater than 0. And so the small one would be, the one to the left will be the 4 minus the square root of 40 over 2. 4 minus the square root of 40 divided by 2. And it's not going to be equal because that's when it would be 0. And we don't want 0, we want positive. And it will go up to the other one, which is bigger, 4 plus the square root of 40, all divided by 2. Now some of you realize that 40 is 4 times 10, and if we take the square root, that would leave 2 times the square root of 10. So we could have 4 minus 2 square root of 10 over 2, and the 2 would go into the 4 and leave a 2, and 2 would cancel here, and we get minus the square root of 10 to 2 plus the square root of 10. We could write it that way. Or you can do it in decimal from the quadratic formula. Okay. 5. We're supposed to find out when this parabola is greater than 0. This is an upside down parabola. So it'll be greater than 0 between the two x-intercepts and equal to 0 at the intercept. So we just got to find the x-intercepts once again. Either quadratic formula or factoring. But we set it equal to 0. Forget that it says inequality. Now we know what we've got to do between the two answers that the quadratic formula gives us, or what we get from factoring. So I'm going to try to factor negative 3x squared plus 7x minus 2 to make it equal to 0. But I don't want negative in front of here, so I'm going to multiply everything by -1 and make it plus 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. And if I do 3x and x, and if I put 2 here and multiply that, that would be 6, and 1 here, that would be 1, which would make 7. But we got to get -7, so both of these have to be minus, and -1 times -2 is +2, so that works. If I set this equal to 0, add 1 to both sides, and then divide by 3. And if I set this one equal to 0, I get x equals 2, because I'd have x minus 2 equals 0, add 2 to both sides. So 1/3 and 2, 1/3 must be over here, and 2 must be over there. And so the part that's greater than 0 on this upside down parabola is between 1/3 and 2. So my answer to this one would be from 1/3 up till 2 inclusive, because I can equal 0. B. This is going to be 3x times x, so it's going to be 3x squared. So this is a right side up parabola. And the part that's greater than 0 will be this piece. So we want the x's over here. And we want the x's over here where this is bigger than 0. So we again have to find the zeros. Well, it's already factors, so we just set the factors equal to 0. 3x plus 4 equal to 0, and x minus 2 equal to 0. Add 2 and we get x equals 2. Notice it's equal to 0, even though that says greater than over there. Subtract 4 and I get 3x equals -4. Divide by 3 and I get x equals -4 thirds. -4 thirds must be this one. And the 2 must be this one. And below 4 thirds, the parabola is greater than 0. And above 2, it's greater than 0. So my answer will be from -infinity up to -4 thirds. Not a square bracket because it says not equal. Union from 2 to infinity. And there's the answer for this one. All right. Some of you made this one extremely hard. You remember revenue is the money you bring in by selling Q number of items at some price P per each item. And they said P is 2,500 minus 5Q. So if I put that in for the P, I'm replacing the P with this, not the Q. So I get the revenue is going to be Q I didn't replace times P, which is equal to 2,500 minus 5Q. And if I distribute the Q, I get 2,500 Q minus 5Q squared. So this is a function of Q. If I find the vertex, it's going to tell me the Q that maximizes the profit and the revenue that maximizes the revenue and the maximum revenue. So if I do minus B over, and this says what price, and I'm doing quantity because this is in quantity, so I'm going to skip down to C and say minus B over 2A is going to be minus 2,500 over 2 times -5, because that's the A. So that's 10 into -10 into -2,500, which is positive 250. So we're going to sell 250 items. To figure out the, I did that too low. So I did minus B over 2A, which is minus the negative of 2,500 over 2 times -5, which is 250 items. And now to get the maximum, the price, I can put 250 into the revenue, but that would give me revenue. But I can put it back into the price equation up here, which is the price is 2,500 minus 5 times the quantity, which is, we figured out, was 250. So this is 2,500 minus 1250, which turns out to be 1250. So selling them for $1,250, sell 250, and that will be my revenue. So I'm going to figure out what that is by using a calculator. 250 times 1250 is $312,500 is the revenue. And that pen's running out of ink. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Here we go. So that's number 6. I could have gotten the same number by putting the 250 in the place of the Q into the equation, and it would also give me that. Now the back page, it says make a graph. So my x's have got to go up to 4. So if I make 0 here and put 1 there, 2, 3, 4, that spaces it out a little bit. And then do my y's, go from close to 0 up to 15. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 down here, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'll plot these. 2.2, 3.2, 3.5, 5.2, 4, 6.2, 1.2, 2.4, 5.4, 5.4, 9.9, 7, oop, I missed that one, 5, 6, so 7 would be out here and up at 15.5, 15, 16, 15.5 out here at 7. 0.7, which is about here at 2.2, and 2.9, 4.1. And that looks very much like a curve and not a straight line. So this would have to be second question. I made the scatter plot, that's the first. Second one, it would have to be the quadratic model because, this is explained, curved. So it's not linear. So it's quadratic. So if I do that on my calculator, I would go second quit, stat, edit to enter my data, and I've already done that in list 1 and list 2. Then I go stat, stat, calculate the quadratic, where list 1 is my x's, comma, list 2 is where the y's are, and then comma, and I can go vars, y variables, function variables, and I can say put the equation into y1. Some of you have any calculator that says regression equation, and that's where I'd put the y1. Enter. And it says it fits pretty well. R squared is 0.99999. The equation it came up with is y equals 0.2999. That's like basically 0.3x squared. B minus 0.196. Well, basically 0.2x. And then it's plus 2.18888, 2.19. There's the equation according to the calculator. Now, if you don't have a calculator and you need to do these, then you can pick 3 points. So I'll just take the first one here. Well, let's use the 0.7 and 2.2. I'll pick a point in the middle. How about the 4 and 6.2? And a point at the end, let's do the 7 and the 15.5. To do this without a calculator, it's not so easy, but we know that the equations are quadratic. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We know that if we put in 0.7 in for the x's, so we'd have a times 0.7 times 0.7. Well, 0.7 times 0.7 is 0.49x squared. And then 0.7 times b would be plus 0.7b plus c has got to come out to be 2.2. And then if we put in 4 squared is 16, so we'd have 16x squared plus 4b plus c equals 6.2. And if we put in 7, we get 7 times 7, 49x squared plus 7b, if I put 7 in for the x, times b, plus c equals 15.5. Now, this is a lot of work, but I have c's in all 3 of these. If I multiply the middle equation by -1, and then add the top 2, the c's will drop out. So if I add these two, I'll get 2.2 and a -6.2 is -4 equals, if I add these two, I get -15.51 if I add 0.49 to -16. Not x squared, a squared. A squared, a squared, a squared. A, just A, there's no square on it. I put the number in for the x and squared it, it's times A. My bad here, these should be all A's. Some of you might be saying, what the heck is he doing? So it should be -15.51A, and 0.7 added to a -4 is -3.3B. If I add the bottom two, the c's will cancel out, and I'll get -6.2 added to 15.5 is 9.3 equals, and -16 plus 49 is 33. A, and -4 plus 7 is plus 3b. Now, to get these, say the b's to cancel out, I'd have to multiply, well, to make 3 be 3.3, I'd have to multiply the second equation by 1.1. 3 times 1.1 would be 3.3. So this second equation would become 9.3 times 1.1 is 10.23. 33 times 1.1 is 36.3a plus 3.3b. If I add these two equations, the b's will drop out and I will finally get a. I'll have -4 plus 10.23, which is 6.23. I'll have -15.51 and 36.3. Let's just round that off. So the 5 from the 3 is going to be an 8. The 5 from the 5 would be 0. And the 1 from the 3 would be 2. 5? Yep. And so then I'll divide by 20.8 on both sides. And I finally get a to be 6.23 divided by 20.8 is 2.2999. And with the calculator I had a become 0.299 something. So we've got an a that makes sense. To get the b, we can go back to one of the simplest one of these equations, or one of these. We can put, let's just do the middle one here. 9.3 equals 33 times a, which is 0.299, plus 3b. So times 33 is 9.88 plus 3b equals 9.3. Subtract 9.88, so I got 9.3 minus 9.88, and I get -0.58 equals 3b divided by 3, and divided by 3, and I get -1.1933 for b. The calculator said -1.96, close enough. Then I put these two values in for a and b into one of these equations to figure out c, and I'll get the 2.19. And that's the idea, how to do it without a calculator. It's not easy if you don't have a calculator. So you should get a calculator or use a phone app or something like that.